This is Backstage Sonoma, your all-access pass to the local music scene.
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Santa Rosa, this is the Backstage Sonoma podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Greetings, I'm Steve Roby, and welcome to another episode of Backstage Sonoma. Today we have the incredible honor of speaking with a true music legend. Our guest is Judy Collins, an iconic singer-songwriter whose career has spanned over 5 decades and continues to shine brightly. Welcome to the show, Judy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Ms. Collins, your music and performances still captivate audiences. What drives your passion to continue creating and performing?
Well, I have a feeling that I don't know what I would do if I didn't do what I do. So I've had such a fortunate career. And when I was little, I started playing the piano and learning songs and singing with choirs and playing with orchestras. And it was all there from the beginning. And I got the good fortune to be trained about music from my father. I learned how to do this. He had a radio career for 30 years. And so a lot of what I do is what he did, with the exception that his career was involved in the Great American Songbook and mine is involved in the Great Folk Scare, as they call it. And also I mix things up. So that's possibly one of the reasons that I love what I do, and it continues to interest me all the time.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about your latest album, Spellbound. It's the first to feature all original material and was nominated for a Grammy for Best Folk Album in 2023. What led you to this new creative direction in your career?
Ever since I met Leonard Cohen in 1966, and he told me that he was surprised that I wasn't writing my own songs. And I went home and wrote a song called Since You've Asked, and I've been writing ever since. And the new project, Spellbound, was really the result of a lot of writing that I'd been doing. And I just decided that I should gather it all together on one album, which I did.
Let's listen to the title track now. This is Spellbound by Judy Collins here on Backstage Sonoma.
Day in Honolulu, looking out beyond the hills, memories and times of heartache, lays of lilies, daffodils. Here I lighted like a bird upon the bright blue water shore, with my hope and with my nightmares, praying I could swim and soar. Dark dreams haunted sunlit days, while I drank down rum and hope. Dreams and crimson lovers dancing on the thin tightrope. Spellbound, spellbound, spellbound. Birds of paradise were walking as though they were angel songs. Bright wings flew along the beaches in their shimmering sarongs. And I thought when I would see them so content and so serene, how could I find that surrender? I could fly, but I would scream, fighting out of beauty's trance, in the light of sand and water, knowing I would crawl the highways, finding my own kind of slaughter. Spellbound, spellbound. light, yearning to know what life knew. Whittle down the drinking dawn to whimper towards the sight of land, hungering to sail in water bright with promise, deep in sand. In these islands once I wept for the lost and for the found, surfacing air and light. Now I live and I am spellbound, 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 spellbound,
And we're back with my guest, Judy Collins. Judy, with a 55 album catalog, how do you feel your music has evolved, especially considering your recent work with Spellbound?
Well, I think it's evolved very well. And I think the main question is what I hear the right song. My mother used to say to me, you didn't learn this from your own imagination. You really learned this because this is what your father did. He chose the great songs of the American Songbook, and he always chose the best ones, the ones that were going to survive forever, so to speak. And I've been lucky enough to have that good fortune follow me around to all of these incredible singer-songwriters that I ran across in my life, starting with the Denver Folklore Society and listening to the radio in those days in Denver had incredible, very eccentric and eclectic people in radio, including my father. But there was we used to call them disc jockeys, but he really wasn't. He just played what he liked. And on the radio, I heard the Gypsy Rover. And also the following week, I heard Barbara Allen, two of the most powerful folk songs in the whole repertoire anyway. And I got it. I heard them both. I suddenly put down the grand piano and said, I'm not going to be doing this Rachmaninoff concerto. I'm going to get my father to find me a guitar and I'm going to launch myself into the folk music world, which I did.
Yeah.
And I was lucky all along the way because a lot of the times I would hear things in a sense by accident. There was no accident really, because when I heard something that I immediately identified that it was going to be mine, I had no compunctions about trying to decide it. It hit me. And so the comparison is interesting. The first time that I heard Both Sides Now was on the telephone in the middle of the night by Joni Mitchell, because my friend Al Cooper was hanging out with her at the club where Blood, Sweat, and Tears was playing. And she told him that she wrote songs, and it was in the middle of the night. And he called me, woke me up, and it was the right song for the right time. So these accidents, as they would call them, although we don't, like the great detectives of the world say, I don't believe in coincidences.
When Al Cooper called you and he played you, did he play you the track or was she performing live?
No, he was hanging out at the club.
I see.
And he ran into this girl and she said, I write songs. And he said, are they any good? Nobody knew who Joni Mitchell was.
Right, yeah.
Tom Rush might have known, but that was it. And so she said, yeah, I write songs. And he followed her home and she started singing. And then he picked up the phone and called me because he said, you have to hear this. And Joni sang Both Sides Now for me.
Live. Incredible.
Yeah.
And ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really dizzy dancing way you feel when every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way, but now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at
And that was Judy Collins doing her classic Both Sides Now. She's my guest today on Backstage Sonoma. Well, let's switch directions for a second here and talk about your podcast. It's called Since You Asked. I'm thrilled that you're doing podcast interviews. That's great. It's provided a unique platform for sharing stories and insights. What has been the most rewarding aspect of connecting with your audience through this medium?
Well, this is something that I've started doing. I've done a few.
Mhm.
I plan to do more. I've had some interesting interviews, including one with Clive Davis, which I don't think is out yet. But it was funny because I said, we know each other socially for decades, although I've never been a client of his. But I said, if you'll pardon my asking, but I just wonder who was the one who got away? Because, of course, he said, well, that's a good question. Nobody asks me that. They asked me who I dropped. And then he told me that the one who got away was Harry Chapin.
Ah,
And I said, how did that happen? He said, well, I was ready with my check. And I had called Harry and asked him to come over to my place. And Jack Holzman showed up with a bigger check.
I guess that works.
I guess it works.
You've also been a powerful voice in social activism since the 1960s, and I remember those days myself. How do you see the role of music in today's social and environmental justice movements?
I see music in my own life, and that's the only way that I know what happens with it. I make a living with it. I love singing. I love practicing. I love going on the road. So all the things about what I do have a pertinence to my environment, my sphere. I don't know. I can't speak about other people because I really don't know. I do think that there's too much of it. I would give a lot to have one or two hotels that don't play music in the lobbies or outdoors in the woods. I'm not a fancier of that kind of use of music. I think it's very difficult to put up with, and I don't like it.
I agree. Good eclectic radio, which is so hard to find these days.
It's hard to find, and these are the people that really set our standards very high. And they told us what to listen to and how we could find it. I mean, FM radio, think about it. Disc jockeys, they called them. Entrepreneurs in the musical sense who knew where to go and what to look for that was interesting and different and not completely repetition and not rock and roll all the time that you can't bear to even hear it and listen to it for another moment because it doesn't go anywhere for you or do anything except if you're dancing. But you can't always be dancing.
I remember those days fondly. Well, you mentioned Both Sides Now, which has become a classic. What would you say your magic formula is for creating music that resonates across generations?
Sing it. Find it, say it's yours, sing it, get the right musicians to play with you. Basic, simple geniuses, all of them. I mean, I've worked with some of the greatest players in New York City. Most of my recordings have been done in New York City, and I've worked with all kinds of incredible producers, engineers, pianists, orchestrators. I've just lucked out because I'm in the middle of this unbelievably talented pool of musicians.
I guess this next question I have, it ties into that about giving advice to emerging artists looking to build a long-lasting career. What advice would you give them? I mean, you've kind of hinted at that in the last response you gave, but do you have any advice for up-and-comers?
Think again.
Choose another career. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard. It so bears down on you because you must travel. You must travel. And I love to travel. So I'm in the position where I started out as a little girl traveling with my father when he was on the road, and I was very happy. I was the only child for a while, and then I was the oldest of 5. But in the beginning, I could travel in the back seat when my dad was on the road, and that's heaven. It's not always the same when you have to travel over the country, here, there, and everywhere, and other countries, and be able to jump on the stage from a dead sleep if you have to. But if all those other things are presented to you and then you say, I think I can do this, then you'll be equipped to do it. Talent is the least of it. Patience come to mind.
Patience, yeah.
And imagination, of course, is foremost. And ideas of where you are. Geography helps a little.
It sure does, huh?
Try not to start out in a van traveling through the rain. Try to get something that's a little easier to do. Or maybe learn to drive. Definitely learn to type. Learn to sing. And get an instrument and learn to play it. And I think you're going to be fine.
Great advice. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
You're known as a musician, painter, filmmaker, and advocate for mental health. How do these different forms of creative expression and advocacy influence each other in your life?
Well, I've been fortunate to have a life that has been consistent. And I think that's a big reason for my sanity, although I've had a lot of therapy. And I used to drink like a fiend, and I don't drink anymore. And I'm so grateful for that. 45 years clean and sober. And that's all because of other people who taught me how to do this. And the fact that I've had work is remarkable. It started out when I was 19. I was living with my husband in Boulder, Colorado. He was in school getting his degree, his doctorate degree. And I don't know what I was doing, not much. And he said, but I had been my whole life. I'd been playing the piano, or playing with orchestras, practicing, singing with choirs. So he said to me, why don't you get a job doing something that you know how to do? And that was when I called my dad and I said, got any ideas about this? I don't know anything about folk music. I don't know whether people actually sing it in public or what. I always sang it for my school shows and for small social situations, sang it in college, anywhere I could get an audience, I would. But who knows? Who thought you could make a living at this? I mean, this was 1959. I don't know how people even thought about doing it, but I found a job in a little bar. And, well, it was really a pizza and Italian food joint, Michael's Pub. And usually they had quartets, maybe an accordion player every once in a while, and a barbershop quartet now and then. But that's all. That was it, and good Italian food. And I went to see the guy who owned it, and I said, could I audition for your club, which I did. And it went well, and I got hired. And from then on, it's been nonstop. I can tell you. I've had agents, of course, and I've had managers, a couple of them. And I've had good agents and people who knew how to put things together. At first, it was kind of a word of mouth situation. Clubs would learn about you from the last club that you played in.
Sure.
And if you did well, then you might have a chance of getting on board for 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 2 months in some cases. So it's always been there for me. I mean, maybe that's a hindrance in a way because I've always been able to do it, but it has provided me with a platform, a place to learn. And my first manager was the great Harold Leventhal, who managed the Weavers, and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, and even Alan Arkin. He managed because Alan was a folk singer first, and he sang with the Babysitters in his early years. Anyway, I was lucky because I had the right people in my life, and I got exposed to people who knew what they were about and knew what they were doing, and wonderful venues, wonderful clubs, wonderful. I've spent my whole life from the age of 19 working, traveling all the time, pretty much all the time. I had a little vacation during COVID because we got locked down and I had no choice. But
Sure.
And that I've been traveling.
Well, good for you. And thank you for the wonderful catalog of music that you've given us over the years.
My pleasure.
Can you tell our listeners about your current U.S. fall tour and what they can look forward to at your upcoming show at the Mystic Theater in Petaluma?
Well, I always make up a show fresh every time. I don't ever want to repeat myself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll sing songs that might be familiar, but not all the time. And certainly look around in my catalog to find what I can bring back. And so I'm going to try to be doing some of the songs from Spellbound and a couple of the hits, certainly probably doing Sending the Clowns, maybe Both Sides Now.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it'll be a new batch usually in a new sequence.
Is there somebody else that's going to be joining you on stage there?
We travel with my pianist. He'll be with me. Russell Walden.
Let me remind our listeners, you can experience an unforgettable night with the legendary Judy Collins at the Mystic Theater in Petaluma on Sunday, September 8th. Doors open at 6 p.m. with a show starting at 7. Don't miss this chance to see a music icon up close. Get your tickets now at mystictheater.com. Judy, thank you so much for your time today and continuing to light up the world with your music and life.
Thank you so much. God bless and have a beautiful day.
Backstage Sonoma will be right back after this quick break.
Hey musicians, would you like to be a guest and promote your upcoming concert and latest release? It's easy. Just email the host at backstagesonoma@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Thanks for listening to the Backstage Sonoma podcast. Join us next time for more great interviews and music from local and touring musicians. You can find us on the web at backstagesonoma.com.